Good morning. This is Jason Pick, Executive Director of the Alberta Turfgrass Research Foundation. Happy to give you this update of recent research going on at the foundation in cooperation with the National Turfgrass Research Foundation. Thank you for joining me. To give you a little bit of an overview for those in the room, the ATRF, or Alberta Turf Research Foundation, was established in '83. We have a 10-person nonprofit board. We generate our revenue by club membership, association membership, service contracts, and applied research. We have open source research available at the Olds College website, infertility, disease, soil amendment, physiology, varietal trials, all thanks to my predecessor, Jim Ross and Mark Anderson. Since 1983, the ATRF has dedicated over $8 million into turfgrass research. We are located, as I mentioned, at Olds College. Our facility has 15,000 square foot USGA spec T1 green, as well as 5,000 square feet of Poa reptans on USGA spec profile, 40,000 square feet of fairway height bent grass and bluegrass, and another 5 acres of bluegrass at rough height or 2-inch. We conduct about $250,000 in research and service contracts every year. Now, the project update that I'm going to share with you is with regards to the project date title, Survivability of Poa Annua, subjected to forced hardening, began in 2025. That's a little bit of a shortened title. I do apologize. It was a little bit wordy in the initial submission. But after 100 days, I can give you this update. So the inception of the project began in discussions in 2024 when, upon spring emergence, we had some high value clubs in the Calgary area lost a great deal of annual bluegrass as a result of anoxia. So the reason being is was weather driven. And it wasn't just in Alberta. We also saw some partners out of Quebec reporting the same sort of thing. You can see on the image there, the square piece, which was still green, that's bent grass that was replaced from their nursery the previous spring. So basically an utter loss of their Poa Annua surfaces in Quebec. The reason for this trend, I think, is a result of some changing Canadian weather. We're seeing warmer falls. Drops in Alberta have gone from 22 degrees in the third week in October right down to -15, leaving less than 7 days for the turf to harden and prepare for winter. On top of that, in Alberta specifically, we do see Chinooks as well, adding a degree of complexity. What we're curious to do or to figure out is, will poorly acclimated turf result in turf loss when tarped? And at this point, there are very few options. You're either damned if you do or damned if you don't. Tarp before the onset of negative temperatures that it would result in death from direct cold temperature, or tarp them and risk that fall anoxia. We know tarping does work. The sandwich system is very popular and proven for many years already, circumventing desiccation, ice damage, cold temperature, as well as diseases covered from applications. But what it doesn't guarantee is protection from fall anoxia, which we've proven and what we're seeing as a result these last few years. So the objective here, of course, is to eliminate the fall anoxia in this project, determine feasible tarping options for unhardened turf conditions, determine a preferred approach for unpredictable winters, and essentially how to respond. And what we've envisioned here is a decision-making matrix for action planning in terms of tarping, what types and when. We do know, due to past research, that Poa can survive about 45 to 60 days hardening, a little bit less than the bent grass counterparts due to its sensitivity and rapid depletion. Jim Ross discovered that venting was effective in maintaining a sufficient amount of oxygen in the profile to allow that turf to recover, but venting is inefficient and frankly very expensive, cost prohibitive for most operators. So there are and there is also always risk regardless of what tarping type we decide to use. So that prompted the design, project design here in Forced Hardening. If you haven't read the report yet, this is what we designed. We've got 8 treatments, each roughly 20 feet apart, to ensure we could duplicate anoxic conditions. Each as you see here, each treatment going from top to bottom go from impermeable to permeable, impermeable to permeable, rotating back and forth from the two different turf types, or rather tarping types. And we installed those 8 treatments in similar staggered fashion. The first 2 tarps, impermeable and permeable, went down at +10. That's where the ambient temperatures and of night and daytime were equivalent to 10 degrees Celsius. Similarly, the next set of 2 treatments, 3 and 4, went down at 5 degrees, where ambient daytime and lows added together divided by 2 were 5, and so on and so forth, down to about -5, of purposefully avoiding -10 and that risk of low temperature loss. So we did not incorporate any passive venting in this test. We want to see some depth and try to create some baselines, and what factors are responsible for that onset of anoxia. What we did under each one of these tarps is we put 4 sensors under each one, collecting UV, oxygen, CO2, NP and K, soil temperature, and moisture. I've got a better video coming up here. The NPK soil moisture sensor looks like this, and you can see they're all feeding into a soil monitoring Pelican case there that's weather tolerant. The little Pelican cases are solar powered, look just like this, measuring soil, PAR, oxygen, and of course the last cable out to the controller. On the right hand side, you'll see our PAR, or 400 to 750 micromole measurement. We're measuring PAR over 24 hours, the photosynthetic photon flux density, which measures essentially intensity and duration. And we're looking at the relationships between those two, hoping that we see some correlation in plant hardening. The oxygen sensors are collecting surface and ambient. We also are collecting soil oxygen with that other soil sensor. You can see on the right-hand side is our CO2 sensor, and the long cable is reaches out to our oxygen sensor, purposefully in the middle, about 10 feet off of the edge of each of our treatment tarp areas, to make sure that we can duplicate some of those anoxic conditions and not be too close to the edges where we could have influence from air getting in or out from along the sides. Now, under each treatment, we also placed 4 annual bluegrass plugs. Not that there isn't a little bit of Poa in the surface already, but this was a very definitive place where we knew that we could reflect back on and measure those specific plugs. So we've got those put into each treatment. The insulators that we used here were generously donated by Green Jacket, and in support from Brett Young, the Futura 7020 TRM system. Now this has been relatively new, replacing some of the older versions, but maximizes UV penetration and allows diffusion for oxygen and CO2 equalization in the passive and permeable system. Just to note, we also applied the adequate amount of nitrogen and potassium per our previous research in order to try to reach a 4% nitrogen and 4% potassium tissue level of in nutrition. Over the 70-20 Futura, we have impermeable and non-breathable, permeable, and UV breathable. We used the Green Jacket system per there's installation specifications on the left, as you can see, and the right, of course, is a simple permeable tarp. In the background, you can see our control. This is a portion of the putting green that was set aside with just snow fencing to allow snowpack to cover and kind of act as that control. No tarp. There's just another better indication of there. So stage 1 control, we placed the first set of treatments. That's 1 permeable and 1 impermeable alongside the control when ambient temperatures and daytime lows or daytime highs and lows added together and divided by 2 equated to 10 degrees. Now this seems like a lot, but this was on purpose, as these were the kinds of conditions that our operators here in Alberta and Quebec were being forced to tarp before temperatures were to fall dramatically. So we're hoping to see a little bit of death in there when we uncover all these. So stage 1 went down October 9th at 10 degrees. The whole area was treated within strata AB, which everybody I'm sure is familiar with, kind of a staple of industry these days. Stage 2 went down on October 27th when we had an average ambient temperature of 5 degrees Celsius. You can see the on the images there. You can see on the images here, our sensors are solar driven. Each one of those pelican cases representing one treatment area. So each tarping system gets its own sensor equipment. Stage 3 went down November 6th when ambients were 0 degrees Celsius. And you can see the tarping system layout is pretty straightforward there. Moving along. Stage 4, we had to wait until November 19th until we hit an average daytime of -5. So, and that's the last set of tarps. That's all 4 stages gone down, and you can actually see a little bit of ice starting to form. At the bottom here, you can create this seal, or you can see the seal, which is kind of interesting that we'll be talking about in future reports. So some of the data the company that we're using for the sensor equipment, we have Syngenta contributing their SPIO, as well as some sensor equipment that we had designed by ERIT Canada out of Calgary. In this set of, they've created a platform for us, and this specific data set just showing you how we're collecting info on light and DLI as well as CO2 in the sensor set. We're also collecting humidity, pressure, and temperature in another data set, and PR and DLI comparative to the CO2 usage, which you can probably expect that inversion. And our data supported that as well. So the early assessment on November 11th, both tarp types. So this was before we even had all 4 tarp systems down. We're tracking weather. Both tarps fundamentally alter the turfgrass environment, creating a semi-sealed microenvironment, which we more or less knew was happening already. The primary cause of CO2 under those tarps are stress from increased cellular respiration, and trapped heat and moisture dramatically sped up the plant's metabolic rate, and we saw those CO2 outputs increase and spike in some cases. The barometric pressure, which we're also tracking, did show to trigger a stress response and amplified that CO2 production, which I found quite interesting in those early days. After 100 days, this was just about the 15th week or second week in December, we tried to, our aim, of course, is to see if we can capture a metabolic momentum. We recorded base and peaks of CO2 production under both systems, and in attempts to try to find a hardened state or a stable O2 depletion rate. So, and ultimately trying to figure out what the comparative strengths and risks are of the impermeable versus impermeable system, a baseline for applying those tarps, and at what types, depending on what's happening in the weather. Those initial findings, we did find into the permeable systems. Anoxia risk was driven by temperature and physiological activity during milder periods. So we did see the greater fluctuation with temperature in the permeable system. Rising temperature resulted in a CO2 drop, indicated, then we were able to see that the turf was not in a hardened state. We're seeing higher fluctuations, nothing stable quite yet in that permeable system. Cold, high humidity periods increased leaf wetness, which also increases theoretically the disease risk. But what we also found was that increased moisture and leaf wetness did contribute to the sealing of that surface. So that was an interesting sort of takeaway as well. What we have learned so far is a stable CO2 floor of about 500 parts per million was found in the impermeable, whereas in the impermeable we saw that fluctuate in those early days from 500 to up to 1,000. In the findings at 100 days of the impermeable system, we saw a great volatility in CO2 accumulation with peaks up to 11,000 parts per million, but consistent at night, 500 of the permeables versus 500 parts per million in the permeables. The CO2 toxicity was, as a result of that tarp, severely inhibiting gas exchange. So soil oxygen levels did remain stable, so which does contradict somewhat that soil level suffocation has been the cause. We have realized that the microclimate under those tarps could be delaying the hardening process. The purpose of all this, to kind of summarize, the CO2 buildup was driven by external air temperature. The temperature swings were pushing turf back into an unhardened active state. Under the impermeable tarps, we saw soil oxygen remained stable, 18 to 22, where CO2 toxicity was the core issue. Primary trigger for the CO2 was the absence of light, and extreme peaks up to 11,000 parts per million were consistently occurring at night. So at this point, we are still collecting data. What we have done is we've been able to really solidify and reiterate the findings of our predecessors, Jim Ross and Mark, of their studies up at Glendale, and hopefully using that to leverage the next steps. What we intend to work on here is to try to create a winter readiness model for superintendents in the field suffering from this changing climate and the weather conditions that are affecting the survivability of our annual bluegrass. The formula that we're working on at this point is trying to a 3-light system. Very simply put, at what point do we get the green light? When our winter readiness model is greater than 80%, and we can safely apply those impermeable surfaces. We have stable CO2 baseline and can go ahead. Yellow light is basically the time to start pulling things out, get ready to go, where our hardening, our breathing period is still happening. The plant is close to hardened, but not quite there. We're calling that a yellow light. And last but not least, of course, is when the winter readiness model is less than 40, regardless whether or not the temperatures we feel are going to be too low, we will know for a fact that if we cover, we're going to lose that turf anyway. So it's a red light sort of situation where we don't tarp, we haven't reached that readiness index to hold off, and the risk of low temperature kill may be worth the risk, so to speak. A reminder that we don't have a field day coming up in 2026. Our next field day where we'll be able to showcase the results from this study will be open in August 2027. So we hope all of you, a representative from the NTRF, are able to join us. Again, thank you all for your generous support. The National Turfgrass Research Foundation, Green Jacket, Brett Young, Iracan, and of course, Olds College for the site to do all this work. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to sharing the next update.